I mean, I've heard men wailing in misery just throughout the nights, whoever it might be, crying because of their experiences and what they're going through. I heard a lot of hollering. It woke me up, and there was a big commotion, guards and different staff running down the company, and people hollering, banging on their bars. He hung himself. He hung himself with the linen that he had in his cell. I sat there in my cell alone. I had the razor that they gave us once a week to shave. I thought to myself it wouldn't take much to, rub it across my veins.
Where do most prison suicides happen? Have you ever wondered where most prison suicides take place? This is a serious topic that affects many lives. Understanding the locations can help in addressing this issue effectively. Most prison suicides happen in the inmate's own cell or room. In state prisons, around 76% of suicides occur in these personal spaces. Additionally, about 11% happen in segregation units, while 4% occur in special medical or mental health services units. Local jails show a similar trend. Approximately 73% of suicides happen in an inmate's cell, with around 8% in segregation units. This suggests that the confined personal space where inmates spend most of their time is the main location for these tragic events. Federal prisons present a different picture. More than half of suicides, specifically 58%, occur in medical or urgent care centers outside the main prison facility. The remaining suicides happen in general housing areas or on prison grounds and in segregation units, each accounting for 13%. This indicates that medical or urgent care areas are significant sites for suicides in federal facilities. Security level also plays a role in where suicides occur. A large majority, about 85%, happen in maximum security facilities. This includes general confinement, special housing units, residential mental health treatment units, and regional medical units. Medium security facilities account for a smaller proportion of suicides. Timing is another important factor. In local jails, more than half of all suicides occur within the first 30 days of incarceration. This period is often marked by acute stress and adjustment challenges. In contrast, in state and federal prisons, most suicides happen after inmates have served more than a year of their sentence. This indicates that prolonged exposure to the prison environment can be a risk factor. From a prison safety and security perspective, these facts highlight critical areas for emergency response and suicide prevention efforts. Monitoring inmates closely in their cells, especially during the initial days in jail or after the first year in prison, is vital. Special attention should be given to those in segregation units, medical or mental health units, and maximum security settings where the risk is higher. Implementing effective suicide watch protocols, improving mental health services, and training staff to recognize and respond to suicide risk signs in these key locations can help reduce the incidence of prison suicides.
Greetings and salutations. I'm Victor Sordi, and welcome to my channel at 28 to Persevere. Thanks for watching. At the end of this video, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video among the many others I have made available on my channel. Today is November the 11th. It's the Einherjar Day, the day we celebrate our fallen warriors, and it also is the month of November, which is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. Mental health is an issue that doesn't get addressed much when it comes to men. In particular, nobody talks about it. It's not something that's promoted or actually even really debated, unfortunately. It's a big issue. It's something that needs to be addressed. It's something that should be discussed. It's something that should be elaborated upon because it is a big issue in life with our brothers that have suffered alongside us, the men in our world that have suffered silently through mental illness and the horrors of depression and anxiety. Well, for me personally, I know from my experience in incarcerated, mental health was a huge factor for a lot of the men that I did time with. A lot of times, I mean, most of the guys in the joint, nobody would discuss mental health. Any forms of weakness or vulnerability, as it was perceived to be, would not be discussed. They would not even be considered. Anybody who suffered through the ills of mental health issues and depression kept it to themselves. There was a lot of wakeless nights where you would be suffering in your cell in silence. There was a lot of tears shed. I mean, I've heard men wailing in misery just throughout the nights, whoever it might be, crying because of their experiences and what they're going through, their predicament at that moment. But I also saw the ills of mental health deterioration. I saw men lose their mind, literally, um, just completely crumble through the constant tension and the stress of this type of life, the bombardment of misery, anger, and violence, compounding one on top of the other. It could break the man's will, their will to persevere, their will to carry on. You know, I've learned something quickly when I was a child, when I went to prison, and my experiences had taught me that, you know, when I was broken open through the suffering I went through, it didn't break me down. It actually opened up something inside me. It revealed something that I never knew I had. That type of strength to go beyond what I felt was tolerable. It was intolerable. I confronted it and I thought to myself, okay, well, this is what I have to deal with. This is what I have to go through. And my will to persevere really stemmed from the fact that I refused to give in to the circumstances around me. I refused to allow my situation to break me. A lot of men aren't as focused as I was on that type of thinking. I mean, fortitude is something that isn't taught. It is inherent. I truly believe that, and I saw it firsthand. You know, there was many men that I was really close to who took their lives throughout my 28 years of incarceration. There was one guy in particular who I was really close to. We spent about 6, 7 years together, and he was the same age as me, and he was facing 25 to life, and he had about maybe 6 or 7 years in at that time. And I met him on the company I was on. We were in C Block together on 12 Company. He locked about 4 cells from me. And as I said, he was a young guy like me. We were both in our early 20s at that point. And he was going through it. I mean, he was going through a lot of hardships and dealing with the time that he had in front of him. And he basically was basically just focused on the fact that, you know, I'm never getting out of prison. You know, that was his mindset. You know, he didn't think we'd ever get out. And he was a good-hearted dude. This dude was a good guy. I mean, he was in there. He used to sell drugs. He was slinging drugs, and he got caught up in a gunfight actually. And you could say, how was he a good guy? Well, the reality was he was a stand-up individual. He was young, trying to make ends meet. He had a wife and kids. He was trying to take care of, and he couldn't get employment out there in the world, and he didn't have many skills. It doesn't excuse it, you know, what he did or didn't do. That's not the debate I'm trying to get through. The fact of the matter is, this guy was going through a lot of hardships, and his mental health was deteriorating. Things he was going through, that trying to make sense of the life he was living now, and he was just trying to make ends meet inside the joint. And you know, one thing led to another, and as I said, I got real close to this guy, and there was a time where you know, we'd have commissary day together. We both went on that Wednesday every other week. And prior to the commissary, the day before, I remember him coming up to me and he was just telling me, "Yeah, listen, Vic, man, you know, whatever you get at the commissary, I got you tomorrow, and I'm gonna get a big meal, and I'll get you Ben and Jerry's, and we'll hang out, and you know, just make sure on Wednesday you don't go to the pit after we get done with the commissary, because usually after we got done with commissary, I would drop my commissary off and head out to the yard if we had yard that day, and I would go obviously straight to the iron pile so I could hit the iron and work out for a few hours and get that in. And he was adamant. You know, he kept telling me, "Listen, man, just put your commissary down. I'm gonna hook up a meal. I'll meet you out in the yard." And at that time, there was so much movement in the joint in Auburn Correctional Facility, and he was just like, "Listen, you know, we'll hang out. You know, we'll eat, talk." You know, he was really adamant about that. He was persistent. So I was like, "All right, man, cool. You know, no big deal." You know, I didn't think anything of it. So he went back, and I met him out in the yard, and we hung out, we feasted, and And we hung on the courts, actually, the sitting down courts. I didn't work out that day, and I just spent the time with him, hanging out with him. And as I said, I didn't sense anything that was going on with him. And he was smiling, joking around, laughing with me. And he was a generous guy anyway. I mean, he would give you the shirt off his back if you needed it. And lo and behold, later on that day, after the yard closed and we were all locked in for the evening, about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard a lot of hollering. It woke me up, and there was a big commotion, guards and different staff running down the company, and people hollering, banging on their bars, screaming medical, medical. And come to find out, um, he hung himself. He hung himself with the linen that he had in his cell, and he took his own life instead of facing the next 20 plus years that he believed that he was going to do, and then the life sentence after the fact. He didn't think it was ever going to get out. So this guy took his life, and I didn't know it at the time. I was just trying to figure it out. You have the little bars, and I had these little window, these little mirrors you could stick out. Basically, you could see down the company. You stick your hand out, and you say, "Hey, what's going on out there?" And you can tell. And I couldn't tell where they were running in. They had stretchers, and there was medical staff, and there was a bunch of correctional officers, and obviously the prisoners were on the gate screaming and banging bars and trying to get attention. Come to find out, as I said, he hung himself in his cell. And after they pulled the guy out, I realized who it was. I saw it, and they pulled him past my cell on a stretcher, and he was gone by that point. I remember looking right at his face, and it struck me. It struck me at that point in my life. My early 20s, the same age as this guy. In our early 20s, and a whole life ahead of us. And it really puts a perspective on life. What it means to you, and things you have to struggle through, and things you have to confront, and how it affects you. And I was really taken back by that, and it struck me hard. I didn't speak to anybody about it or anything that day. It was a lot of guys we met out in the yard, and they were saying, "Oh, you're so and so, what happened, this that," and we briefly mentioned it, and it was a horror show, but it wasn't unheard of. A lot of guys did that, and you almost desensitized to the fact that this is the reality of everything that you're going through inside the prison system. Sometimes I wonder what the average suicide rate is throughout the Department of Corrections, throughout the prison systems within the United States. I wonder what that percentage is, considering how many men I saw that I personally bore witness to, the amount of suicides that I experienced around me through 28 years of my incarceration. Sometimes I wonder that, I wonder what statistics are out there, because it was an epidemic throughout my time. And I imagine that, the horrors of prison haven't changed much, and, the hardships that the men endure inside, and how that affects their mental health moving forward. And the men that are also released into the world that carry that baggage and that stress of the constant strain of the life that they left behind physically inside those walls, the prison walls. I do wonder that sometimes. And it's the reality is a purpose driven life is a life that you're in pursuit of something greater than the moment ahead that you see right before you. You're ahead of something thinking wise. Your purpose is beyond just the moment. You're totally focused on that purpose, whatever that purpose is. And, everybody needs a purpose. Everybody needs a motive. Everybody needs something to drive them, something to inspire them. And, I'm a real advocate for those that are inspired by what they're inspired by. I truly believe in the will, the strength that we have inside us to confront the unknown and what is in front of us, no matter how horrific it might be. I believe we have the potential to overcome it, be it hardships of mental health issues to physical illnesses and ailments and things that we confront every day, personal and impersonal. This reality I saw single-handedly throughout my time incarcerated, and you can equate that with the world beyond the wall. Obviously, the two correlate in so many ways. It's an issue that should be talked about and addressed, as I stated earlier. And we can speak on hours behind the reasons why. Perhaps it's not addressed. Perhaps they're the machismo of being a man and doing the right thing and providing and staying strong and fit of mind and body. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm a true advocate of a sound mind and a sound body. I truly believe in that philosophy. You know, the more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in battle. I mean, I lived that, the Sparta motto. I mean, that was me, that mantra. I mean, that motto I abided by, and I still do to a large extent because I understand where it stems from. That's that type of perseverance and that strength to overcome it, that sense of fortitude that I spoke about earlier. So, you know, I embrace that, but I also understand that there are times that men need an outlet. They need somebody to lean on, in a sense, to understand that, to wake up to their own heart and let this out. I mean, my podcasts and my interviews and people that I've spoken to, um, they've helped me. They help me deal with what I've dealt with in my life and to let it out in a sense. These videos have helped in that fashion. They are therapeutic and cathartic on so many levels. But a lot of guys may not have that outlet or may not be comfortable behind a microphone. And that's cool. You know, you got to find that purpose, you know, what it is that gives you that sense of strength and fortitude. Because, you know, we all have the will to persevere within us. We all have that desire to overcome, and there's nothing more inspiring than when you are, you know, sitting there and you realize you're victorious. You know, I came and I conquered. You know, I saw whatever it was and I overcame it. You know, I remember throughout my incarceration, seeing men that were just the hardest cons you can ever come across. I mean, cold-blooded killers, and these guys were monsters. I mean, in those no uncertain terms. And you know, you look at these men and you see how hardened they were by the reality around them and how they adapted to it. And these same men I also saw break down. I've seen men that after they were hit by the parole board, they were in their cells just crying, holding their denial slip and crying like babies, slouched over on the edge of their bed, broken down and broken because of something outside of their ability to control that decision. And they lost their strength, you know, their purpose in a sense. And I've seen it firsthand. You know, a lot of guys put on a face and you know they front and they strut their shit. And they, you know, they tough Tony and the machismo is rampant, especially inside the joint. And I get it. I mean, you couldn't show any type of vulnerability whatsoever. I mean, your whole focal point was putting on the front of strength, even if you weren't strong. I mean, there was guys I knew that were scared to death. I mean, shit, when I was a young kid, I was scared to death. I came into prison at 19. I mean, surrounded by grown men. I was the youngest guy in the Auburn Correctional Facility back when I was there in 1999. There was nobody my age. I mean, I was 20 years old at that point. And I looked around me and I was surrounded by hardened crons. I mean, all grown men. I mean, there were times guys would come up to me like, you know, why are you here? And I spoke about this in previous videos. My first week incarcerated in Auburn Correctional Facility. And, you know, it's an eye opener. And there were many nights that I sat there in my cell alone, and you know I had the razor that they gave us once a week to shave. I looked at it many times, and you know, and I thought to myself, it wouldn't take much to you know rub it across my veins and my arms, you know, whatever the case, or my neck. You know, I thought about it. It definitely crossed my mind, you know, but my love for my family and my desire to overcome this because I knew the injustice that we all face collectively, and I wanted to do my part to rectify it and not justify those that were against us, and that put us in the position that we were all in now, and keep me incarcerated. And if I should perish, then they would win, and that was my inspiration. You know, I could not let them win. I've always been competitive, and that flare just never burnt out. It flamed more and more until it was a raging inferno within me. And that type of anger, you could say, or motivation, or whatever it was, desire to overcome and to be a free man again, that drove me, and it still drives me to this day, being a free man and going through the hardships and the ups and downs and trials and tribulations of everyday life that everybody's going through in their own sense and their own way, and they're finding a way and finding a means to an end. And that's what it's about, finding a means to an end and overcoming whatever it is that you're confronting because you have the ability to do so. It's within us all, and I truly believe that. And mental health awareness is something that I truly believe in and something that I advocate for and really adamant about addressing. And so, you know, thank you all for this time and your time. And until next time, go with the gods and persevere.